Hey, how you guys doing? So I was I was walking into a store today in the small town I live in, and I walked in the store, and this kid came up to his mother, and said I looked like Jesus. Anyway, uh, no, that's how it goes. But I'm doing this podcast about Natal Pluto. I figure I think I'm probably gonna got so much information on this natal Pluto. I think I'm gonna do two podcasts on it. Um, uh, natal Pluto. Pluto itself has very it's a kind of a tough energy to describe. It kind of reminds me of the Tasmanian devil, if you remember him from the cartoons. Tasmanian devil come in and uh, he would destroy things, right? And, he would he would come in kind of like um a lot of people don't know this, but the Tasmanian devil is a real animal. Anyway, um, it was a cartoon basically. Uh, um, it was this. Um, Let me see if I could. I don't know if you guys remember a cartoon a while back. It's like a whirlwind, you know. Pluto's like a whirlwind. It kind of flips up things. It doesn't mean uh, it doesn't mean death or oops. Yeah, before I get in trouble, um, it it was this Pluto is a tough energy. Uh, it, it it's it's like the Tasmanian devil in the sense that don't know if you ever remember the cartoons. Tasmanian devil would come in, and it was like a whirlwind, and it would there he is. So he's like Pluto, he would come in, and it's kind of rough. Uh, Pluto is similar. Um, yeah, would make all the animals run away. Just that it's very powerful. This small little planet. But I mean, how do you come up with this? These things of believing actually that Pluto is such a small thing, whether it's a planet or what Neil Tyson, that guy, saying it's just a rock or whatever. So how can you say it's probably the most powerful thing there is in astrology? Well, it goes back to interpretations and people writing down experiences and things that has happened, personal stuff. So anyway, Pluto is like the Tasmanian devil. That's how I kind of interpret it. It it's it's like a whirlwind. It's really running fast. Okay, so anyway, um, it transiting or natal Pluto. Natal Pluto in your houses would means, different things. First house and then Pluto being in your first house would probably be extreme transformation throughout your whole life. Pluto in your second house of money, you would have to constantly transform how much money you would make, or what to do in transformation of money, or how you would make money in the material things, and have interesting points of view of material things. Communication, if natal planet natal Pluto is in your third house of communication, maybe you have a very unique way of communicating. Fourth house is Pluto in the fourth houses. You probably have a very unique family or fatherhood, or anything of the sort. The fifth house is, basically the fifth house, it would be pleasurable things. um, it would be quite interesting if it's in your sixth or seventh house natal Pluto. You probably would see friends come and go, families come and go. Um, uh, it would be a placement in the eighth house. It would belong in the eighth house, Scorpio. Pluto rules Scorpio. Um, Mm, if it's up near your career, 10th or ninth, you probably see a big transformation in your career. And probably 11th as well. And then 12th house is your mind. And basically, if anybody has Pluto there, is probably has to deal with self and the mind as well. Either way. Um, um, so when the United States was created in 1776, obviously the 4th of July, 1776. Pluto um, was in Capricorn. So some planets you're not gonna live for uh, to see all the planets go into returns. Uh, Apparently, Pluto takes 247 years to make a return, to go around the chart, to go through all the houses. So the US has got Pluto in the second house, and it's at, I think, 27 degrees. So um right now, Pluto went into retro. It's going backwards. But remember what I told you about the second orb. If if you have if Pluto's 27 and natal Pluto's 27, it's right here and it doesn't move 2 degrees before or after that 27. If it's 25, or if it's 29, or 0 degrees, close to 3. If it's 2 degrees before or after that 27, it's conjunct. They're together. They're together. So transiting Pluto is coming around the U.S. Pluto. It's meeting up. So what does this mean? Well, I'll be quite honest with you. Not many astrologers lived, like modern astrologers that have written, you know, transits about this. You could do your research. I've done my research on this. I took it to a personal level. I've taken this to a personal level because of personal issues. And I've studied this transit to a full degree. And basically, um, if you don't want to listen to my interpretation of the Pluto return, you could always Google it. You could always find it and you could find other interpretations. I try to stay away from basic karmic or past lives stuff. I don't believe them. But Google search Pluto return of the U.S. What does it mean? You could Google the U.S. Pluto return, and you find different interpretations. And I'm going to give you my interpretation. And I'm not doom or gloom, and that's not me. But I could guarantee you, it's 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 really really happening now. Uh, the the return. It's really really happening. Um, so let me try to explain this, and I'll explain this a little bit differently, just so you could see uh, it for yourself. The natal chart of the U.S. 4th of July, 1776. Pluto's down in the second house. There it is. And it's Pluto is down here in 27th degree, right down there, 27th degree. So there it is. So Pluto right now is at 28, but it's hovering. So it passed by natal Pluto once or twice in the past 2 years. So in the past 2 years, if you looked, uh, you could see people are very edgy. There's a pandemic, there's riots of all different types, not just one. There's just riots everywhere. I mean, look at Sri Lanka right now. Uh, People are really upset. So basically, Pluto, I'm just saying this in a basic amateurish way just to explain it. Here's Pluto. So Pluto, let's just go back to 1776, and Pluto's right there. Uh, 14 years later, it would be right here. And it takes 14 years to go into a house and to get out of a house, roughly 14 to 15 years, depends. So it's like 14, 15. So it took 247 years to go around the chart to all the way back into all these different signs. It took 247 years. So here it is back in Pluto's in Capricorn, and it's sitting right there. And that's what's called a Pluto return. Now, what do you call when your sun, your natal sun, goes around the chart? It takes a year to go around the chart, comes back to your natal sun. Your transiting sun goes around the chart, all the houses, and returns to your natal. That's your birthday. That's your birthday. Well, this every 4th of July, every 4th of July is a birthday of the United States. Yeah. So this is a Pluto return for the United States. So in the past 2 years, you saw all these riots and these horrible things, this pandemic. Yeah, it's people are on edge. Crime is up. If you look back at the birth of the nation, it took 8 years for the Revolutionary War to end. It didn't take 1 or 2 years. It didn't take a drone. It took 8 years. 8 years for the 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 nation to get involved. And if you know your history, there were a lot of battles that were this close that we missed. Washington missed, and not missed. I mean, missed by almost didn't win. So apparently, it took 8 years um, after 1776 in order to uh, to stabilize. So Capricorn also represents the government, land, uh, the estate, the government, law. Um, It's the energy is very controlled. It's the winter time. Things are dead. Um, it's that type of energy. So Pluto being there, um, and Pluto being in Capricorn. When did it get into Capricorn? Okay, so it went in. It's roughly coming out. It's going to get out at 2024 um, fully. When did it go in? I'll tell you. The exact time it went in was 2008 and 9. And that's when the financial market dropped. So I did my research. I did a little bit of research on this, and this is kind of interesting because what I found out was if I look back just recently, so somewhat like 45 years. If I look back at 45 years, I saw uh, transiting Pluto when it went going backwards when it went into Sagittarius. That's when it went into Sagittarius. It was roughly 1996 or 7, and that's when the U.S. had problems with their bonds, and they had to maneuver their bonds because the the country was going through a big turmoil, uh, uh, financial turmoil. Now, if you go back and when Pluto was leaving Libra and going into Scorpio in the 80s, it was roughly the time of 1988 when the stock market crashed in 88. Always some financial problems when Pluto left a certain sign for the US. Uh, now, now there is a time period where there's a lot of riots and financial problems, and Pluto is meeting up with the natal Pluto. I look back at I look really further back, 2000. No, I'm sorry. Uh, I went back from 1776. I went back 247 years before 1776. And what I noticed was when Pluto was in Capricorn at that degree of 27, and it was roughly, I think it was 15, it was 15 47, if I'm correct. It's when Martin Luther banged the new rules of religion on to protest the Catholic Church. It was back then, and back then they had terrible. It was like it was a really rough time in the Catholicism and religion. And it was just it was pretty rough. I went back from, I think it was 1546. I think I went back to um, I think it was roughly, if I'm correct, it was 1286, 1286, and from what I read, there was there were riots all over Europe, and there was the Black Plague, and there was this. I don't think it was a Black Plague. It wasn't Black Plague. It was Black Plague came a little after, if I'm correct. It was a it was a pandemic that killed a lot of people that they didn't know what it was from. Uh, Very interesting stuff. So here it is. Um, when Pluto makes a conjunction at a certain planet in your natal chart, what it does is it comes in really rough, but it leaves in better terms. So you gotta always keep that in mind. None of the transits are bad things. I mean, people just, people are clearly hypochondriacs with astrology. A lot of times they fear it, the fear of knowing what's going to happen to them, and it's silly. Um, Transiting Pluto on your natal sun is very powerful. Transiting Pluto, here's a good example. If you could take this example and kind of apply it to the other planets and the energy, you would you get the gist. Pluto, transiting Pluto on your natal Mercury. Natal Mercury is money, so Pluto turns things around. So Pluto, if you have transiting Pluto on your Mercury, your mind Mercury is the mind. It's money. So the likelihood of you throwing material things out when transiting Pluto is on your Mercury, natal Mercury, is pretty high. Um, um, Getting back to the US, um, Pluto was close to 27 degrees in 2020, the summer of 2020. And that's where you got your protests and riots and civil obedience or disobedience, or whatever you think it is. That was a clear indication of it. It was very close to the 27th degree. I think it was 25 or something like that, but it was two degrees close to 27. Now it's surpassing it. It's laying on 28, but it's going back to retrograde. So it'll be 27 this summer. And obviously the US is suffering with shortages and gas problems and a lot of turmoil. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think it's going to stop for uh, this summer. But overall, it's also the indication of this new generation that's kind of kicking in what they believe in, and right or wrong, it's not the issue. The issue is basically showing you that astrologically, it has a lot to do with the planet activity, and it's just there. Um, so the Pluto return will be, I think, 27 next month, and I'm pretty sure that they'll probably see some action with China next month. I'm pretty sure of it. Uh, it kind of, unfortunately, it kind of flows with what we see. Uh, who wants war? Nobody wants war. Uh, um, but it's in unfortunate that it's like this. But when Pluto does leave Capricorn, it's going to it's gonna be for the best, and things are gonna get better. Um, w- uh, Regarding money, I don't know. I'm not an investor. I don't give financial advice, but I don't think my personal opinion. I don't think a lot of what I think there's going to be a transformation of money, of how we look at money, and it's going to be like a lot of transformations of different things that we come across in what we um, see how ourselves. Basically, um, the U.S. might see a woman president. Um, I definitely know Joe Biden next year has got that South Node in his sign. Well, actually, it's not. It's this year, but it is this year. The South Node, the North Node is in Taurus. The South Node is in the sister sign of Scorpio, which Joe Biden is a Scorpion, but he's a late one. If I'm correct, he's a late one. So he's a late one. So he is something unfortunately will probably occur next year. Um, mm, it's a big transformation. Um, uh, the Pluto return for the U.S. is a very big transformation. Government, laws, um, how we look at things. At the end, it's gonna come. It's gonna come better. Um, and a lot of people, a lot of people are geared towards um, um, voting Republican, right? So I think you know I think the media has been very polarizing in regards to both parties, and it's unfortunately we got two parties. We should have several parties like Europe does, but uh, I think um, I think this red wave in November that they're talking about is probably some indication of Pluto going back to 27 or 28. That could be a clear indication. But like I said, I really don't like getting into politics or anything. But I'm just trying to say, like, if you look at the overall existence of lately of politics, who the hell wants to be the president of the United States? Because it just seems like each party is impeaching each other president. I mean, if you just listen to the Republicans, they're gearing up to impeach Biden. So, who in their right mind is going to really want to be president in the future? Because you can just constantly be impeached, be sued, and for whatever reason. But that's my belief. But the thing is, maybe that'll be ironed out. I hope, but I don't think so. I think once we see this red wave coming in November, I think eventually it's going to be bigger than what a lot of people perceive it to be. Uh, and it's going to be very emotional. Um, that's how I look at it. And that's what I see. You know, I don't see it being, I mean, I don't, you know, the climate is just very diverse. It's just very diverse. But that goes to show you that's the Pluto return. I mean, I don't remember. I don't ever remember being so diverse. The both parties being so hatred being so much to be name calling in politics. I mean, if you looked at what's his name, Ted Koppel, Tom Brokaw, Dan Rather, I think several years ago, it's like 2 or 3 years ago, they came out and they said, they were afraid that the public isn't going to get the right amount of news because there's so much um, diversity. Uh, it's just diverse. It's just polarized. Uh, it's it's so singular, like you know, polarizing that you're just going to get opinion for the news, which isn't good. Um, I think that's very problematic, but that's very much a Pluto kind of thing. But I think eventually, towards the end, we'll see something come around. Um, it's going to be for the better. Um, Another indication of that is, I think it's in 2025, if I'm correct. 2025 is when transiting Neptune goes into Aries. Now, the last time that has happened was the Renaissance period, and all this type of creativity, music, and fashion came about. It flipped. There was this a crazy amount of creativity, and I think that's going to come out after 2025. And Pluto, Neptune, when Neptune goes into Aries, and that's another small. It's not a small planet, but it's also very slow. So it takes it's another one about 10 to 12 years, roughly 12. I say a little bit longer, 12 to 13 years to stay in the house. Um, so I think like a good indication of how to read somebody's chart is to find 2 points of where slower planets are, and to see if you, as you grow in your um, astrological life, you will know the dates of certain planets and when they go into certain houses, like the slow ones. And that shows a clear indication of where or how the atmosphere of the world is going to go. Or the world, or the native of the natal chart. Um, Hope that makes sense. Like, for instance, if you looked at the U.S. chart and Pluto, and it's having its return, and the return is going to last for another probably 2 more years, because it's going to swing back and forth to 27. So once you see that happening, and then when it ends in 2024, and December of 2024. Then eventually in 2025, um, uh, Neptune Neptune goes into Aries. That's a clear indication of all this creativeness will flow. Because of the Renaissance. The last time, it was like 225 years ago, the Renaissance period came about, and all this creative music that was just very unusual for people, and the wigs on everybody, and the different type of music that flowed, and all that type of creativeness. came around when Neptune was in Aries. So, yeah, so you could see the flow of where things would go for the United States. Um, that's how you got to look at astrology at somebody else's natal chart. You have to look beyond what you see, but what you know in that person's chart for that person. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of astrologers don't do that. It's so unfortunate. It's like saying, well, yeah, astrologers would say something to the effect of, well, oh, I could see you having a child when you're 27, but yet not explaining how they think or how they know that. And that's what's sad, because you're paying a ridiculous amount of money for somebody to say that. And it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Um, yeah, I met a lot of astrologers, and I'm like, you know, how could you do that with your right mind? How could you do that to somebody else? Pay me $150 and I'll tell you what I see. Well, how do you see it? Well, just explain it to them. It just takes 5 minutes, right? So yeah, you see a lot of that. You don't you you want to give your natal chart to somebody you trust. You know? You don't want to give your natal chart to somebody who'll say, "Oh, in your past life you were a frog. That's why you're having such a bad time now." It's horrible, but it happens. Um, yeah, it it's a really tough time for a lot of people. I hope it gets easy, but I don't think it will for the next 2 years. I think it's gonna really be a tough thing. Um, if you just listen to what people say financially, the talking heads financially, years ago, I don't remember this. I don't remember hearing so much pessimism in regards to uh, economy recovery. Uh, I remember like people used to say, "Wow, inflation's up right now, but in 6 months it's going to be okay because such and such is going to happen." But you don't hear that. You don't hear that no more. Unfortunately, that's another thing. Like I said, it's kind of that time period for the country, and I see it with this little small town that I live in, and it's sad. It's sad. I wish there was something, you know, but I think astrology kind of helps. I think astrology helps. Um, you just got to stay positive. You got to keep going, and you got to just read your books and read different things. Um, Pluto return would definitely bring in a lot of hostility, like the Tasmanian devil. But once you leave, maybe things will be better for all of us, for everybody, and and that's what we have to look at as in the U.S. in different parts of the world. I mean, it's just not just riots in the U.S., but I mean, you see riots all over the world. just recently, the Arab Spring, um, right now in Sri Lanka, having riots. Um, People are angry. Um, and yeah, people aren't surviving. I mean, you know, I think the U.S. Is a good example of the diversity of the both parties that seems to be so angry, like angry and in so much rage that they I don't think they listening to the way they're talking. I mean, whether it's the right or left, it it shows so much anger. Some ways, the radical Democrats are are an example, or they're they've they are who they are because of what Trump represented, or what they perceive Trump to be representing. And then yet, the full time, it's the pendulum swinging. So now you're seeing Republicans that are basically filled with this type of rage and uh, ready to conquer and do whatever they want to do. Um, yeah, yeah. It's it's something you could see in astrology. If you really, if you track down somebody like a celebrity is good to track down, because you could always see, like, if a celebrity gets into the news, you could always go to their natal chart and see the different transits that are happening for that person. You probably could do it with that right now with Johnny Depp or Amber Heard, whatever, and see the transits that are happening in their natal chart. A good example was somebody recently, even though that we didn't have the time, and when he passed away in jail, it was Jeffrey Epstein. Because when Epstein died, if I'm correct, if I remember, but we're going to look into it. When he passed away, I think he had Uranus. I think he had Uranus on his natal natal north node, something like that. Um, and I think it was training his something. I think is Jupiter, his natal Jupiter. That the degrees are really important, somewhat, and I think you gotta look at, you gotta have a positive point of view in astrology. You gotta look at it positively. There's really nothing negative, but when you look at somebody's chart, it does arouse the actions that are happening in their lives. So Jeffrey Epstein was somewhat of, I don't think they have his time. Last time I checked, I don't think it was they had his time, but they did have, you could look up his planetary natal chart and see his death, and you could see the transits on his natal planets. Um, yeah, so um, I'm going to still try to do more podcasts. I'll probably do a podcast with about his death, what has happened uh, with him. Um, I did look into it quite a bit in the past. It's interesting. Another one is it's Quincy Jones. From what I understand, Quincy Jones is like 83, 84. I forgot to say when I did my Uranus, just the podcast before this one. He had his, because he was in his 80s. He had, because it took 80 years for a transiting Uranus to go around your chart. He had a Uranus return, and when he had a Uranus return, is when he came out and spoke out about Michael Jackson, Marlon Brando. I think he was promoting a book or something. I don't know, but I think he was being interviewed, and he had these incredible insights of people like the Beatles, and I think it was Elvis or Frank Sinatra or something like that. It was a while ago. Um, yeah, I think I remember that he was being interviewed, and he had these wild inklings of those people, and that's when he had Uranus. He had a Uranus return. I think Debbie Reynolds had a Uranus return, if I'm correct, when unfortunately when Carrie Fisher passed away. I think Debbie Reynolds was in her 30s. No, I mean, I I think Debbie Reynolds was in her 80s. Um, Sorry about that. Mhm. I hope there are greater. I think there are greater times that are coming. I think greater things are coming with technology and different things. I'm not a pessimist. No way. I'm an optimist, and I think astrology helped me in that sense. You could also buy certain programs for astrology. You could buy programs that you could actually see timelines of your whole life. You could see certain when certain things occur in your life. You could see planetary action in certain years. Um, Everybody's different, but age wise, um, like your 29 Saturn return when you're 29, and when you're roughly 58 or 59, you have another Saturn return. Those two Saturn returns are two different energies. Like, well, if you think about it, 29 is like um, when you're coming out of college and you're confused. You worked really hard, and you want to do what's right, and you're just tired. You're a hard worker. You know, you worked really hard to get where you're at. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, gosh, if you're a lawyer or a student as a lawyer, uh, like a student that studied law or medical, or you're in the college for a number of years. Um, you come out of college and you want to know where you're going to go. That's when you you have a second Saturn return when you're 58 or 57, roughly, roughly like that. It's has to do. an event happens where you kind of question your existence because of your age. I've seen it happen time and time. Um, Looking at different charts and seeing the people at certain ages. I've seen it. It's clear as day. Uh, yeah, it astrology helps. Astrology helps. Um, think I gotta take another break. Um, I'm trying to do what's right and put out this podcast. And I hope it benefits somebody out there. Uh, Put out a lot of wisdom and just keep on plugging. I think I'll be back in a few minutes and do another podcast. Thanks for being here and thanks for listening. I hope you guys stay calm, cool, and collective. Don't let anything bother you because nothing's worth it. Um, Thanks.